Hey everyone, Josh back. Sorry I haven't posted videos in a little while. Due to my own laziness and I guess a weekend of rum and ginger ale, it's not exactly made for conductive video making. Not that I really, as I'm sure you know, have a massive amount of visual flair in my videos, but regardless to even seem semi-coherent, I need to be at least sober. So, on that note, last night I went to see The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. Actually, rather unexpectedly, I caught a like 11 o'clock showing. Usually wouldn't go that late, but out of the blue, one of my friends asked me. So, I went, and I was entertained. I won't say this is the best movie I've ever seen, but you know what? It was better than I was expecting it to be. Going in, I thought it would be fairly boring thriller, even though the trailers looked half decent, and I do like the concept. I ended up liking the concept a lot more by the end of it, just the claustrophobia of it. I think could be played up a lot more. Thinking of picking up the book too, but definitely gonna watch the 1974 version. Anyway, the plot is basically that a trainway director or subway director gets called by this hijacker who calls himself Ryder, and Ryder takes the hostages of this one train in a supposedly perfect spot for hijacking due to reasons that are explained in the movie that I won't bother explaining here, and asks for $1 million per hostage, or $10 million overall. And this is basically a story of the conversation between them, how the police attempts to try and rescue the hostages, and the trainway conductor's story of redemption. And said trainway conductor is Denxel Washington, and the writer is John Travolta, as actually a particularly menacing villain in my opinion. He's very much I'd say traditional Travolta, but it doesn't make him any less enjoyable. The plot I thought was pretty good. I thought it swerved off in a few places. I think I would have preferred if the movie was more insular, keeping most of the action between the conversation between Barlow and Ryder, two main characters, and because it was particularly tense, kind of had a rapport between the two that was really intriguing. I didn't think that their cuts towards the mayor's perspective or the money transport's perspective was really necessary, and it got rid of that that feeling, or at least deflated that feeling of claustrophobia that I found so attractive in the movie. Otherwise, it moved along a decent clip, and despite a lot of reviews, I actually think it held up pretty well in the third act, despite the feeling of claustrophobia being ruined at that point. It still provided pretty satisfying action, and not unrealistically so. It was a pretty smart thriller, actually, if I do say so myself. There's obviously some holes in this movie, but I'm not gonna really bring it down for that, because in a movie of summer blockbusters, including Transformers 2, which I will review soon, it's nice to not have your intelligence entirely insulted. That said, the characters are pretty well portrayed. Ryder, like I said, John Travolta, is fairly typical John Travolta, but does make for a particularly menacing villain, and is just generally, we haven't seen John Travolta in this role for a little while, so it's actually pretty refreshing. Denxel Washington turns in a good performance as always, perhaps not shattering, or perhaps not mind-blowing or anything, but it was entertaining, if nothing else. I thought he fit the layman role pretty well. Now, one thing I did want to discuss, actually I'll go on the sound first. The sound and the music in this movie was fairly good. I didn't really have any problems with it. Most of the time it was inobtrusive, not really impressive at any time. The only time I actually really noticed it was during when I said that it cut to the transport's perspective. It has this kind of like electronic music going in the background. I didn't really understand the point for that. That entire sequence in general, that they kept flipping back to it, even outside of the destroying the feeling of claustrophobia, just seems so pointless. It's like they have this image from Google Earth overlaid on the screen, and then they zoom in, and it's the transport. And may I say, these are the most hilariously inept transport people on the planet, as every time it clips away, or almost every time, someone crashes, or someone falls off a highway. It's just fucking ridiculous, and it makes no sense. And there was really no reason for it in the movie that could have been just a very quiet conversation between these two guys. It could have been very tense. And I guess it's a commercial appeal that they want to add in there, but it just didn't really work for me in the context of the movie. That said, the majority of it wasn't bad. Like I said, it was inobtrusive, and I guess didn't really add a whole lot, but it wasn't offensive. Now, one thing I do want to talk about is the effects in this movie. Now, back in the 90s, they had this kind of motion effect where it's not quite slow motion, but it seems to clip from frame to frame. And, you know, I don't know why, but this is used a lot in this movie. And I mean, almost constantly in some scenes. It didn't need it, and is really distracting. Now, anyone that's familiar or has disliked shaky cam in this movie probably shouldn't go. It's not the worst shaky cam I've ever seen, but there is a whole shitload of spinning. There's a lot of zooming in on the faces while they're spinning, and trying to make it really exciting as they're talking. I didn't think it was necessary. I thought the movie could have stood on its own, just using the conversation, using just a still shot. But, again, I guess Tony Scott wanted to make it more commercially viable, which I guess failed in the end, because they've only made about $53 million as I'm reviewing this. And it cost $100 million just to make it, not even including marketing, so, yeah. Kind of sad that this isn't doing so well, because while it's not the best movie, it's still a pretty decent movie, and it's built better than a few things that I've seen this summer, at least. Now, overall, also, I need to get a touch on the action before I go, is mostly insular, which I did enjoy, outside of the transport van in the end, which did have kind of a runaway train car sequence, which I actually thought was pretty entertaining. I mean, again, a lot of people say this derailed at the end of the movie, but I didn't find it so much, and especially the chase sequence between Denzel Washington and Ryder at the end, and you know, I was very intrigued. I'm like, oh, what's gonna happen, you know? And especially so near the end of the movie when the two meet after they've been talking for the entire movie, it really gives you a feeling of like, I want to say chills, but not quite chills. More just a feeling of mystery, saying, oh, what's gonna happen, you know? Like, how are these two going to interact when they first meet face to face? And especially because Travolta does provide an imposing figure next to Denzel Washington, who has slightly bulked up in fat-wise for this role, so he doesn't look nearly as imposing as he does even in movies like Man on Fire. Now, overall, I would say, you know what, this is probably worth a matinee. Go see it. It's not the best movie. If you like thrillers, then this is probably worth seeing. It's not the best thriller even, but Denzel Washington and Travolta provide some adequate thrills, and the movie does deliver on its premise. I was actually quite pleased how they handled it for the most part, and it's a pretty entertaining concept. You don't see it all of the time, the train robbery that is, mainly because there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of variety in it, but I don't think it's really necessary to show a lot of variety, and the concept itself provides a variety of reasonings for the audience to go see this movie, because, like I said, it doesn't happen very often you see a movie like this. So, I wouldn't take it over some of the larger blockbusters, say Star Trek or Up, but this is definitely a movie worth seeing. It's not the greatest movie, but even if you can't catch it in theaters, make sure to rent it. This is Taking a Pelham 1, 2, 3.